Everybody, and welcome to the Kings of Jank podcast, episode 2. With me is Michael.
Hello there.
Paul.
Hello.
The new one. Simon.
Hi.
And Ben.
Alright.
Right, everybody's heard about the new mulligan rule, yeah?
Yeah,
We have.
So, it is called the London mulligan.
Instead of just drawing, when you mulligan down, instead of drawing 6, you'll draw 7, and then you'll choose one of those cards and stick it on the bottom of your deck.
Mm-hmm.
And if you mulligan down to 5, you take 2 cards and put them on the bottom of your deck.
Continuously
Each time
drawing
you draw
7, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all the main
You draw 7
difference,
and throw,
isn't it?
throw some number of them away.
Yeah. And I genuinely have sat there, and me and Paul have tested this out, and it seems like a better way of mulliganing. It seems like a fairer way of playing the
I was
game.
going to say, that's the
It
thing,
also
does it add
is a
any
way
level
to
of
piss
unfairness?
yourself off as well, because if you lose, you'll blame yourself.
Yeah, you can't just go, oh, well, I didn't know that was
Yeah, a
coming.
bit more than normal.
Yeah, it is an extreme form of like, oh, I should have kept this. Why did I bottom that? Sort of shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So turn the hatred onto yourself. That's a better way to do it.
Well,
Like-
it leaves less up to chance. If you mull to 5 normally, if you do the proper mulligan and you mull to 5 and then you scry, yes, you get the scry, so you see the top card, but you don't know what the next card is. Whereas if you mull to 5 on a London mulligan, you've got 7 cards in hand, so you've gone, this is my 7 cards. If I mull to 5, I wouldn't see these 2. So now I've got this, I can really pick and decide whether I'm going to keep it or not.
Right. I'm going to get the stupid question out of the way. Does anyone know why it's called a London?
Because I think that's going to happen at the London GP.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's where the
That's
changeover
when
was
they're
going
gonna
to
do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
they're trialling it at the London GP. A lot of people think they've already
Yeah.
settled on it.
Mm.
They're naming it for the GP where they're first using it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose the only question about it really is, does it add any more unfairness to the game, or any more like janky behaviour that you could do?
It does in different game types. It does in modern a little bit more than it does standard.
Yeah.
But because we're talking about standards, not really. Like
Yeah.
it helps aggro a lot.
I think it's most
Yeah.
favourable to control, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is. It is. It literally lets control go, I want this and that and the other, and I
Yeah.
need this answer and that answer. I don't need all this land. Just get rid of that.
it's true.
It's a much more fair and consistent way of playing, because notoriously the land base, you always have to build a deck around your land base and see if your land can actually support the card you're playing. Now with this new mulligan rule, everything becomes a little bit more consistent. So will it change the meta game of building decks, do you think?
Ooh.
Maybe a little bit.
That's
You
a
can be
really
little,
insightful question, actually.
You can be a little bit riskier,
Jesus, I
I
wasn't
think, when
ready
you
for that.
build, because you don't have to be as worried about mulliganing down.
Will people end up putting a little less land in the deck because of this rule?
Potentially, yeah, I can see
Yeah,
that being.
It might drop 1 or 2 land out. Maybe down to 23 instead of 24.
Yeah.
Because you've always got that. I sort of expect some all down to 6 anyway, because your opening hand is never. If it's great, then you've got a bonus. You're playing with an extra card. To me personally,
Yeah.
as I would build a deck, and if you always more down to 6, then you expect
Yeah.
for that. Whereas if you now more down to 5, for example, if your 6th hand had all land or no land, vice versa, more than down to 5, it isn't that much of a big deal now, because
Yeah.
you've still got the choice of those 2 other cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the same way as it used to be, where
I
it'd be
suppose
like
the best
you mull
thing,
5, you
the
lose.
best thing it's going to cut out, I suppose, for like me on a sort of lower magic level than you nerds,
Yes.
is like it will cut out some of those games where once you mulligan down to 6 or you mulligan down to 5, that's it. Like there's no point you playing. You know,
No, yeah.
I've already screwed up with this hand.
Absolutely.
I can't mulligan down any further.
Yeah.
So I might as well just trash it now. Whereas if you've got that choice in front of you, you can still. I think in the majority of decks, I'd say pick 5 cards that you can play with from the start.
Yeah.
Really, if you've got that choice between those cards, rather than having to rely on the 5 cards you draw.
I think the main reason for this is to eliminate the more down to 5, I've lost.
Yeah, exactly. So
The
it's
instant
good.
scoop that you see in like Pro Tours, where they sit there, they'll mull to 5 and they'll just go next round, because
Yeah.
sometimes they have to, just because they know they're going to lose.
The only thing that I think is going to make it a bit unfair in some ways is if someone's running combo. People are
Yeah, because it
running
makes their combo, like you said, a little bit more consistent. They're able to find their combo pieces.
It's not
Yeah.
quite a Paris Mulligan, but it's close enough.
Yeah, but the thing about that is there is virtually no combo in standard
at the moment.
at the moment, and they're being really, really careful for a few years now. They've been really careful about introducing them.
Yeah. And you got to think if they're introducing this rule, they'll be thinking of that at least for the initial few years. Of we can't allow a sort of set out that will do that.
Well, it was like
this new Mulligan rule.
It was like the last combo that I
Cat
saw.
combo.
Yeah, cat combo is one of them. Yeah, but like
Disgusting.
the last combo that I saw was the Sahili Roy Joyra combo that they had with artifacts, which was pre-rotation. It was literally a red-blue artifact deck that just drew its entire deck and then just swept
saw
the
it
board.
once.
No,
Yeah.
don't lie. The most recent combo you saw was Marwin.
Marwin. Oh no, Marwin was brilliant. No, Marwin's a really janky combo that not very many people did, but it was still funny because it relied on pre-standard instance of just untapping and making it bigger, and then tapping for more mana and just tapping for more mana until you could just Banefire someone for 20.
Well, the original combo...
Which you let happen.
Yeah. Well, gratefully. Thank you very much, Alex.
Shut up!
The original combo of that was to make the biggest... What was it called? That artifact that gave +1/+1. You could tap it to remove counters to strike
Oh,
things. Walking Ballista.
Yeah,
yes.
Originally, that was the finished piece. You tap mine for an absurd amount of mana. Then you'd make a huge Walking Ballista and just tap them to death.
Yeah.
Bit harder to do, but still works.
Absolutely.
You just have to look at the Infinite Turns deck where the player just plays with himself for half an hour and wins.
Oh, what Nexus?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was funny. I played against someone doing that. They used it 3 times and still didn't beat me.
Yeah, it's because it doesn't stick. It's so unreliable. That's why people are running that stupid Esper thing with Teferi and 1 Jaya. No, not Jaya. Kaya. Like a playset of Teferi and Kaya. And it has no win cons apart from that. And it to me, like, from a Magic player's perspective, from my perspective, that is the most boring way of playing I've ever seen. It's nearly as boring as playing Nexus. Because playing Nexus, you sit there, you shuffle your deck. You sit there, you shuffle your deck, and you just play Magic on your own. Whereas with this deck, you're not playing Magic on your own. You're just breaking everybody else's toys and saying, I'm playing Magic on my own, and no.
Yeah, and we all know people who enjoy that element of things. Like the people who are just like, I literally don't care if I can win and bring a single tear to a grown man's eye. I am content in life.
Yeah.
And like they're the kind of people who are really happy to just run those decks.
Yeah, it's one of those things that there are people that like playing that way.
Yeah.
But it's still boring. Even to them, I've seen people that play it, and they look bored out of their mind. And it's like the only reason you're playing, like I think, it's the people that take Magic as a hobby in net deck because they take it as a hobby. They take the deck, they know what the deck does, they know how it works, and it's such a simple A to B that they think, oh, I can win anything with this, and then they just get bored of doing it.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
For some of the cards as well, and I'm
It's just overly consistent. It's too consistent, so there's no variance in the game for them or their opponents, so it's just boring as hell.
Going back to the 7-card Mulligan rule.
It's one of those things that I really think is going to help the game. It's not only going to help the game for new players, it's also going to help people, for veterans who have either got sick of standard or don't really want to play anymore because of certain things that go against them, like variants, like when they feel naturally unlucky and things like that. Because there are people that do, like yourself, Paul. You felt like that with them. You've always said to me that if you multi 5, chances are you're going to lose. Now, I believe that was the old Mulligan rule, but with the new one, I'm a little less convinced because...
It's more put back onto the player. I think it's more down to your skill and your ability to play.
It's down to the pilot less than the deck, and it's also the fact that it's card selection.
Yeah.
This goes down to the fact that they're giving you card selection in a Mulligan instead of just going, have a scry, because scry, back in the day, was helpful.
Yeah.
But now, because of how powerful every card is and how much you need to think about what you're going to play next and how you need to think about the board state and what's going to happen, you need that Mulligan to 7 to drop down to 5, or you need to have those 7 cards to see so you know exactly what you've got and when it's going to happen.
It opens up another avenue of thinking as well, doesn't it? So instead of Mulligan in the old rules, well, the current rules right now, it's whether can I keep this 2-lander? Will I get another land? Well, do I
Yeah,
have to-
it's a gamble.
absolutely. But with this newer rule coming in, again,
no.
more consistency.
Yeah.
So you now have to think about your lands, but also you have to think about your plays. You can get a 4-land hand on a mull to 6 and think, actually, it could be a 1-land hand. That's all I need. We just put so many land at the bottom.
Yeah.
Now, I just thought of something. There's been a few times where myself, when I started playing, have mulled down to 6 but still drew 7 cards. Oh crap! I've got to go down again. I've got to mull again. Otherwise, I'm cheating. Because it will sort of.
I suppose, yeah, it does
that,
count
wouldn't
that
it? Because
little-
even if you accidentally draw 7, you'll be reminded that you still have to mull down to 6.
It effectively fixes the drawing too many cards.
Fixes the miss, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's another thing, like you said, that was aimed at, like, I think, keeping new players. Because I don't necessarily think with Magic the type of thing is getting them invested to actually try the game. I think it's more keeping them there once they play it. And I think something like this will help because it takes away that element of, oh, well, the game's unfair. It's all just based on the luck of, like, the draw you've got. With that element more of tactics from the Mulligans,
But
they have got more of a reason to sort of be able to understand what they want to play and where they want to play it.
is that more likely to make new players feel stupid though because they know they've made the wrong decision?
I did think about that.
It may
I think
do.
that's potential.
It may do.
I think it depends who they're playing with and how they're made to feel about it. I
Yeah.
think if you're playing with something like our group and a lot of people at F&M are quite good because they will unmaliciously come over and be like, oh, okay, do you mind if I look at like what your hand was or whatever?
Yeah.
And like they'll give you genuine advice and they'll show you cards and be like, oh, if you got this in, it could do this. Which I think is really good for a new player because it makes it like, okay, it's not I'm crap at the game. It's like, oh, there are things I can improve on actually what I'm building.
That's one of the things we are good at. If we can help people, we help people.
Yeah.
Like, as long as they want the help, we'll give them the help. That's the best bit about our group. Every single person in this room has helped each other in some way, somehow, at some point, with a deck or with an idea or with a way of playing.
Yeah, because I think there's an element of taking yourselves less seriously than some of the people in that shop. And the only one whose voice I hear actually sounding serious is Alex, and that's mostly at himself saying, "What a stupid thing I did!"
Yeah.
Like so, that's not really the
Yeah.
same to me
No,
as
but
like the
this is the
saltiness
thing.
you get off people.
This is the thing. I do get salty at F&M. I am gonna say, even though it's just a game, and even though it's not really important, I do get salty at F&M.
Oh,
but
yeah,
the only reason I get salty is not because of what my opponent's done or how my opponent's played or how their attitude is towards me. That my opponent, to me, because when I sit down, I don't see the person I'm playing. I just see. I don't.
Yeah, you are a blank slate of a human being to
Yeah,
once we start
That's
playing.
the best way to be.
Yeah, that's what I see. I see a
poker face element.
I see nobody. I see a blank slate, and I don't care. All I see is the deck, the cards, and the information that I've got from that deck. Because 9 times out of 10, when it's a meta list, I know what they're going to be playing.
As soon as you see the first land,
Yeah,
you pretty much got that deck.
most of the time, yes. Sometimes people surprise me, so I tend to change my ways. But when I get angry and salty, the reason I'm getting salty is because either I've made a misplay that was so bad it's cost me the game, or I've made such a mistake of either underestimating the deck or overestimating what I kept, and I blame it on myself. I'm very self-critical when it comes to playing because I believe it's more to do with the pilot than it is to do with the luck of the draw.
Yeah.
I'm very much a person of the ethos that the pilot is more important because the first 7 cards you get are the 7 cards that chances are going to win you the game. This actually brings me on to another topic as well, because I really want to talk about Sphinx of Foresight. I really it's not on the agenda, but I genuinely want to just bring Sphinx of Foresight in. I pitched this to Paul. I said it's effectively cheating, and it does feel like cheating because you can plan your first 3 turns and know what you're going to draw and know how you're going to play, no matter what the opponent does. Unless the opponent does something drastic, which on turn 1, 2 or 3 is very minimal chance, you're pretty much okay.
It's true.
That's the scary bit about Sphinx of Foresight.
The thing is, again, like I was saying before, for control and combo, it's an insanely good card, even though it won't actually work with sort of a combo at all. It will work with control because you get to scry at the beginning of each.
Plus when it's on the battlefield, the upkeep trigger is just scry 1. That's just so helpful.
Yeah.
It's more card selection. You could make a deck based around card selection using Sphinx of Foresight, using a playset of it, and just not care. But you'd have to be clever with it.
You have to get them to stick.
Miss it and all that.
Well,
That's
to be
up
honest,
guys.
There's an argument, isn't there? you've already got the value from it if it's in your opening hand.
Yeah.
Whether it sticks or not is a bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's so good about it. That is what's so good about it. Because it doesn't matter if it sticks. It genuinely doesn't. I've had it in my hand, I've played it late, and it's died, and I've gone, oh well, you had to use removal on that, but you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
That's why I left it there. But those kinds of cards where you reveal them in your opening hand and they do something, they're always, like, even though it's a scry 3 on your opening hand, that's still really good, especially in the standard that we've got at the minute where it's the only card that does it.
Yeah.
Like, if they bring out stuff in the new set that does it, then it will kind of diminish its power. But until then, I'm willing to say that it's one of the best blue cards you can play in Control. Definitely.
Yeah.
Would everybody agree with me?
Yeah.
Situationally, yeah.
Situationally.
For its effect, yes. For the card you get when you cast it, no.
Yeah, I
No.
agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that
So
as well.
we play tested it a few times, didn't we?
Yeah.
And you and yourself have done it.
Mm.
It seemed to work really,
In
really well.
mid-range, it's got a lot of potential power, I think, but there's also the risk that if you've really got to make the decision right the most, I think, in mid-range
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
anything else.
And there's also so many other things you want to do at 4 mana.
Yeah.
Chupacabras, hostage takers for starters.
Filled
Don't
most-
lose
most
that
of the
bloody dog.
I mean, I'm tempted to almost see it as like how people treat op. There's basically 56 cards in the deck,
Yeah.
and that just
Yeah.
helps you get close to the ones you need.
Yeah, it is one of those cards, and you can also, if you have a discard outlet, it makes it even better. Because if you really don't care about it that much, you can use it as a discard outlet, or as a glorified blocker, or as a resource remover from your opponent's hand. Because a 4/4 flyer, people are still going to want to get rid of.
Yeah.
And even if they're not getting rid of it, if they play a Crisis on turn 6, it's still a 4/4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
So
playing with it.
it's still going to trade. It's still going to get in the way.
Yeah.
It's a really good card. But yeah, moving on, the next thing we want to talk about, which is going to be the really long bit, which
Oh.
I'm looking forward to.
Nice.
Right.
You had to make it weird, didn't you?
Yeah.
What makes a good Magic player? Now, this is a question that I've thought about since I met Paul, because when I met Paul and we actually started playing, I used to really try to study every game that we played, even if it was a friendly, just because I wanted to know where I was going right, where I was going wrong, what points I was doing. And we had a lot of arguments about a lot of things.
We still do.
We still do, because I feel a certain way about a certain thing because I'm trying to analyse it from a different angle. And I want to hear your guys' takes on what you think makes a good Magic player.
I think the most important thing about a good Magic player is someone who can have fun. That sounds like a really cheesy answer.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mark. That's a really cheesy answer, but I think that is,
No, I agree. I
is
completely
the most
agree.
important rule about being a good Magic player. That and playing as many different decks as you can to learn how they interact with other decks and
Yeah.
how to beat them and find their own weaknesses by playing them yourself.
Yeah. But no, I think that having fun part is incredibly huge, because if you come into Magic thinking, oh, I'm going to win at Magic, like I'm going to beat everyone, I'm going to get, like, one, you're going to be severely disappointed, and two, that's not really what you play for.
There was a
in sense.
particular case of a guy who came to FNN when I first started. This was back in Shadows over Innistrad. There was a particular case of a guy who came for that exact reason,
Yeah.
and he bought a deck off a guy. It was the meta deck at the time.
know this guy.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. We're not mentioning names,
No.
but he bought a deck off a guy because he was desperate to win, because he had a reasonably crappy aggro deck and he hated it.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
went to this, I think it was like red, white, blue at the time, or was it, what colours was it?
No. It was what the deck that he was running at first, or the one.
No,
he
the
switched
second
to
one,
before?
yeah, the one he
The
bought.
one that he bought was black white. It was Angels. at
Oh,
the
it was
time.
Orzhov,
okay.
yeah, it was black, white,
Yeah.
angels.
It was a
um,
control list.
It was
I
a
don't know if you remember it, baby.
yeah,
Yeah.
the one with
vaguely.
Gisela and
Oh,
and
And
Avacyn.
Bruna.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
one where
Bruna,
it
yeah.
fused together
Okay.
to.
Yeah, Brizella.
Brazilla.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah,
that.
Brizella, the double faced.
I love
Yeah.
that time.
It was a good card. It was a really good card. But he bought that and couldn't understand why he was winning, and then he sold the deck back to him and he quit. And it makes me sad that he did, purely because the only reason he quit was because he didn't understand that it was about the pilot more than it was about anything else.
Yeah.
It's as much as you can have a good deck, like you said, the player needs to be good, or at least have an understanding of the mechanics of Magic the Gathering and the deck itself before they can actually enjoy it. Like for me, the most enjoyable thing, because you were talking about fun, the most enjoyable part of Magic for me is one, partially building a deck. Like, I don't enjoy the fine-tuning, I enjoy the idea, but also the mechanics of the interactions and the synergy in the decks. So, for instance, like it was like me and Paul were talking about Frilled Mystic and Justicar's Portal. Now, Justicar's Portal is a flicker card, 2 mana, exiles the card, brings it back in the same turn on the same card, which means it can enter the battlefield again, and when Frilled Mystic enters the battlefield you may counter target spell. So if someone plays a board wipe or something, you can pay 2 mana, play Justicar's Portal and have a negate anything for just 2 mana. And that kind of interaction for me is really interesting. It's fun. It's
almost worth building a deck around that interaction on its own.
Yes, exactly. Like there's certain interactions that I look at in Magic where I go, I want to build a deck around this.
Yeah.
Not that it's going to work.
Yeah.
But it's just I want to see if it can work.
But that's part of the creativity, and I think the big part of building a deck in the first place, which also makes you a good Magic player overall, is being able to problem solve. Because that's what you're doing when you're trying to make a deck work.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've only been playing for like 3 months or something now, and like the most fun I've easily had on the game, other than some of the absurd games you have where it's just like, oh, I've got 35 fucking tokens on my card or whatever, is that like co-building decks, I suppose, has been something really fun. Like me and Sam have been doing, like we've been helping Jake build his deck. So like sitting there with people and going like, oh right, we've got these like 5 cards we'll put in, like, oh, but if we play that, it means that you haven't got the card draw in this deck, or if you decide you want to go on card draw. Or like Jake's got the minute with his Drake deck where he's complaining that he wants to play a more creature heavy deck. So we've been sitting there for like an hour going, alright, like you want Electromancers in there and probably Electrostatic Fields, but then do you want 2 more creature cards? Do you want to take out your like that's element of it is so much fun. Like the hypotheticals you're playing off of each card.
It's very subjective. It depends on who you're building with, because if it's just sometimes if it's 2 people, then violence can occur. I say this with the most love as humanly possible, but when me and Paul build a deck, I think one of us is going to kill each other before we finished because of how much we hate each other while we're doing it. Because there's a lot of cards we've disagreed on in the past. And one of the biggest cards that we disagreed on before was Fanatical Firebrand, because I thought about Footlight Fiend. Now that was a hard sell, and I didn't sell it to you because you were right. But the one of the biggest things about it is admitting you're wrong. That's one of the biggest things about Magic is admitting.
I've done it myself. Sometimes I've said a card's absolute garbage and I found a deck that it'll fit in.
Like Shalai. Shalai's a prime example. You hate Shalai, but the one deck you've built where it's actually good. And it's like, this is a good card now because of the deck it's in.
When you were talking about building decks, that's a good point. One of the best tests, I think, of whether someone's a good Magic player or not, is how they handle limited formats, sealed and draft. Because you're being asked to build a deck on the fly. Either from cards you're given or from cards you've drafted. And you'll see a lot of players who've come into the game through building net decks. They just can't do it.
No.
I think you need to ideally either play with a group of friends or make friends with the people at your local shop or F&M or whatever.
Which is exactly what I do.
Because otherwise, like you said, if you are playing just on the net plays like Arena, I feel like you're losing so much of what actually makes the game fun, that social interaction with people, and that, like you said, just how you interact with each other and play the game development. Like we're doing a podcast right now about a stupid bit of cardboard plastic because the game is that type of game where you can have those interactions for 3+ hours.
The cardboard crack invades everybody's life somehow. It does.
As much as I love Arena for being really close to the original game, the only thing it hasn't replicated, the only thing it can't really replicate, is actually being sat opposite from another human being and ruining their life.
It's very similar to watching, like,
you can do that. You just time them out.
Well, no, it's just like the best you can get on. If you're talking about the rage quit perspective, the best you can get from MTG Arena is a rage quit. It's just watching someone quit and go, ha, I win. But when you're actually there, like there was a game where I was playing the Approach of the Second Sun deck, and I had an Abzan variant that ran Blossom in Defense. I mulled to 5 and I won the second round because I top decked 3 Blossoming Defense in a row. I have no idea how it happened, but I top decked it, and the guy opposite me was just like, will you please stop playing Blossoming Defense, because I was beating him to death with a Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
Yeah.
That was it, a 2-1 for 2 that was just killing him. It was just absolutely murdering him. And as funny as it was, to me the win was satisfying because of how much he wanted to win and how much he thought he could win because of the matchup, because it was a mid-range versus control, which you would think would mean he would win by default.
Me and you have a habit of having mid-range that beats control, though.
Yeah, you shouldn't be quick enough to beat the control deck.
But the one thing that makes it quick enough was Resilient Kenra, which made them bigger to a 4, and Blossom in Defense, which then made it a 4, which meant because they kept trying to remove my stuff, they were on a 5-turn clock. Every single time I was playing a Blossom in Defense, it became a 5-turn clock. So it just put so much more pressure on the game, especially when Resilient Kenra's in the deck as well. I've got 2 different means to get rid of that sort of stuff.
See, that's a good example. Knowing when to play stuff at instant speed, knowing when to use stuff at sorcery speed. For example, in that exact scenario, you were hitting them for 4 every turn, because every turn they were getting greedy and trying to kill your Glint Sleeve Siphoner at instant speed during combat.
Yes.
If they just gone, you know what, untap, draw, kill it, they've got twice the clock.
Yeah. If they'd have done it on their turn at any point, they would have screwed me.
Or you draw an extra card.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually think that the people that actually design their own decks are the people that would actually take the game forward.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, the people at the top that are making the meta game in the first place, they don't sit around there just copying other people's decks. They're the ones.
Yeah, Grixis Death Shadow in Modern didn't come out of didn't fucking magic itself out of nowhere. It came from a brain.
Yeah, and
it's usually a group of people sat around together working out.
Yeah, that's another thing as well, though. Like, as a new player, that's another bit of advice I give to anyone who wants to start playing. And I know it sounds stupid. Don't look at the meta at all. Just don't look at it. Listen to people who give you advice on your cards.
That's exactly what I tell people.
But yeah, just don't look at the meta at all, and just try and build your own deck from looking at the cards and figuring out
that's what
matches
I told
up
new
with
players.
each other, playing them.
Because
it's so much more rewarding, it's so much more fun, and you don't end up thinking, right, I like this deck, but the 5 people sitting next to me are all playing the same deck except for one card's different. Like, it's nice thinking I've actually built this from the ground up.
Yeah, it's like you do.
It's a sense of pride when you win as well. Whereas when you copy a net list, I don't think you get the same.
Yeah,
go on, Simon.
Go on, Simon. We keep interrupting you.
I say it's like you do you, and then when you're ready to sort of tackle the meta game and tackle it in the way that you want to, then you can look at that.
Well, you've got several choices. You can either net deck and go to the meta and then just vary the meta decks to help the mirror match, or you can go completely anti-meta and try and build a deck that's going to counteract the meta, which is harder, but it's actually better to do, because then ironically that deck will become the meta if it works.
Yeah, for every deck that becomes the meta, there's like 500 decks that just die horribly.
Well, but it's all about trial and error when it comes to building like that, and that is one of the things that does make a good Magic player, like you said, Paul, is building your own deck. Literally building your own deck and actually learning the interactions yourself, because the more treat it like a video game, treat it like any kind of fighter, like where you're learning combos. Like, you can watch people on YouTube do tutorials and tell you how to fight like Liu Kang or whatever, and just learn combos like that. But you can also invent your own.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a bad analogy, but this is actually a completely accurate.
No, you can invent your own, and as soon as you invent your own combos, it not only counteracts the meta in that fighting game, it also makes people go on the back foot and go, "What is this? I don't understand. How do I sideboard? How do I interact with this?"
A lot of my favourite moments have been playing against people, like, and then they've gone, right, you play this. Oh, you're going to play that next, and then you play something else. Like what? And then you can just see in their face, like, recalculating, wait a minute, this isn't actually the meta, I need to rejudge every single thing I thought you were going to play.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
it's a beautiful moment.
That's the oh, hang on, I actually need to think face.
Yeah, it was
but I do think it shows how many people are just copying the meta, because I've met so many people who are just like, alright, I know what you're going to play now, so I know you're going to play this, because they're so used to playing people who are just running the meta.
There's 4 games in FMN, isn't there? Played
Yeah,
by
four
different
games.
people.
Yeah.
3 different people, sorry.
Yeah.
2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, pretty much
Yeah.
the same deck.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, going back to what Simon said earlier about making a good Magic the Gathering player, is particularly the limited format. But ultimately, that comes down to experience. The longer you've been
Oh
playing,
yeah.
the more you've been playing.
Yeah,
Same
I mean
with anything.
that's the
Practice
difficult
makes
part, isn't it?
perfect.
Because you got to say to new. I think it's a difficult thing to say to new players. Right, if you want to get good at the game, you have to learn most of the cards
well,
and what they
that
do.
makes a good Magic player.
Yeah.
What makes a great Magic player is ability to combine that with just having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how much. It's like when people say a deck can't be fun if it's good. I can understand where people come from when they say that, but I'm pretty sure that the majority of people in this podcast right now have decks that are good, that are fun.
Yeah. Well, and also I think some of the
That
most
at least rake in a win rate of 2 or 3.
Yeah. I think some of the most joy I've seen on you and Simon's face is when you're discussing what I would call troll decks.
Yeah.
So and it's essentially just like, look, I know it's probably going to win 1 out of the 20 matches it plays, but it's so much fun.
That was pretty much how I started playing. That was my goal.
Yeah.
I mean, trolling people is so much fun.
Yeah, it is.
It's not the Kings of Jank for no reason.
That's true.
Yeah, it's why we are the Kings of Jank. We like doing trolly funny things.
Good,
It's
we,
like
we found the title, plug it. And
it's like
I mean, take standard. What I think it was like 4, maybe 5 years ago.
back in the day.
Back in the day, I had a deck that would shoot someone for 20 over the course of 1 turn.
Yeah, I know. You told me about that. That was funny. That was it. It was like the Font of Agony's deck you made, where it was just like a Danto Vanguard, pay 4 life, kill 2 things. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean that was a failed experiment, but
it was still
it was a fun experiment.
it's still a semi-meta janky kind of like obsession to just remove as much creature base as possible.
Yeah, it almost worked.
It did its job. It worked to a point.
Yeah.
It might have worked if you had different removal, if the removal was just specifically Planeswalker or Artifact and Enchantment related, because then you could have just focused the font on just bodies.
You never know some of these
It's a good
janky
thing
combos.
as well, when you sort of know when to give up on an idea as
Yeah.
well. When you
Yeah.
If I
try
had
every
better-
avenue, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
If I had better luck, I'd be obsessed with trying to build a Mirror March deck because I just think it can turn hilarious.
Mirror
but
March could be good. It could be good, but it's nothing that you can control.
No, exactly.
Palaka-worm.
No, exactly. And I'm the kind of guy who will call
Palaka-worm.
tails on a 2-headed coin. Like, so it's just never going to work for me.
No, it's not that. It's Mirror March is good, but the reasons why you can't control it aren't for the reasons you're thinking. It's not about the coin flip. It's about the mana cost. You can't change that mana cost,
That's true.
but it's so high for what it does that if it was 4 mana, I can understand, because the coin flip is another bit of that card that makes it. Because if it just said make a copy and then flip a coin for each other one, then I can understand the mana cost of 7.
Yes, but it's
yeah.
the initial.
It
But it
works
is
better.
for every card you then play after it because of it being a channel. Like it stays on.
Yeah,
And so, like, there was like the turn when I did play it. Was,
1,000 Years
I
Storm
played
was
3.
worse.
I played it. The next turn, I dumped 3 on, flipped it, and ended up with 7 5/2s, 5 2/2s, and 3 1/1s with flying. Like, admittedly, that was the best it's ever going to get with that kind of stupid card. But I just want it. The troll in me wants to do something.
I think there's lots of times though where the meta even uses cards that at first sight look like absolute jank,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you
It's how
see it opposite
people-
you in like one of the best decks in the
Yeah.
format.
Yeah.
Prime example, Hostage Taker would be a massive example of that, and Thief of Sanity would be another massive example of that.
Everyone is running hostage taker.
Because Hostage Taker and Thief of Sanity, I saw Thief of Sanity and thought, I'll give that a go. That looks like a fun Gonti type of card.
Yeah.
Gonti, if you're not familiar, is a 4-drop 2/3 in Kaladesh. That when it enters the battlefield, your opponent reveals the top 4 to you only. You pick one and put it on, and even when it's removed from the battlefield, you can still play it for any mana whatsoever. Thief of Sanity does that, but it's a 2/2 flying and does top 3 when it swings instead, and then puts the 2 in the
Yeah,
graveyard.
when it connects.
Yeah, so when it connects. So when it connects and deals combat damage, you look at their top 3, you pick one, you put the other 2 in the grave, and you've just got card advantage. Congratulations. and you just can keep getting card advantage as long as people don't touch it or don't have the capability to touch it, which some decks don't at the minute.
But people will also have flyers that can just straight up block it and ignore the card.
Definitely.
You know,
It's why-
it is very removable as a card.
It's why Thief of Sanity only works if one person is playing it at one time. If someone else is playing Thief of Sanity, it gets boring very quickly because you're just playing each other's deck at that point, and it's probably going to look the same.
Yeah.
I mean, the other great thing about Thief of Sanity is when you have to. For example, last Friday I got a little bit desperate for sideboard cards, and I brought it in as a blocker against mono blue aggro.
Makes sense. Terramander.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terramander's.
I like Terramander. Don't know why. Just like that card.
Terramander's really good.
It's
It is a good
card.
It is a good card.
It is.
I just like it. It
good.
can be early game and late game.
Yeah.
Like in
It
the sense
feels a
of
little
like,
bit restrictive in the ability to play it though, because it forces you to play more sort of instants and sorceries than you might otherwise play, I think.
It's not too bad, to be fair.
I mean, I'm not
It
sure.
works
I think if
in
you're doing
Timber.
it in, I think you've got to fit it in something like a Drake deck where you're trying to burn through your instances
is.
anyway.
It is in a Drake
Exactly. Like so, and I think that's if you're doing that anyway and you're trying to burn through those instants, then it's a good little card. Like
It's actually a really weird card because it's like officially it's a Simic card, but it's so much more, is it?
Yeah.
Mm.
It's so much more. It is.
Is it
No,
really?
It is. Yeah,
No,
it is.
Oh,
it's-
joke of the
Thanks,
podcast
Dad.
goes to.
Sorry, I'm a bit slow.
And the award for the best joke that didn't go over goes to. No, the thing with Terramander that makes it so scary is in a heavily instant and sorcery deck. Yes, it's good. It's meant to be there. It's meant to do the thing. But if you put it in as a sideboard option in, say, a deck that has 10 instants or sorceries, where you're gonna go to late game anyway,
It's still enough, yeah.
it's still enough.
Yeah.
Adapt 4 or Adapt 3 is still enough for it. It's Adapt 7 for originally. No, Adapt 8. Sorry.
No,
But
not
you'll
7
probably
and one
you'll
blue,
probably get
yeah.
it down. You'll probably get it down to about 4 or 3
The thing
by
is-
turn 7. So it's not really a problem. You can play it for 5 mana and have a 5/5 flyer, which is still mana efficient.
Yeah.
It's a 1/1 for 1 with flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That can ultimately turn into a win con on its own.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's good being a 1/1 flyer to
Yeah.
begin
Sneak
with.
it in under syncopates.
Yeah. This is also a prime example, ladies and gents, of the way people discuss cards when they are thinking about it, when they are thinking about what to put in.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that every Magic player does at their kitchen table. The only difference is we're doing it in front of you, and the only reason we're doing it in front of you is because we love you. We love you
All 5 of you.
all 5 of you.
Like,
Hi,
subscribe.
Mom.
Like, please like, comment, and subscribe. I need to feed my children.
Please feed us. This is going to be something.
We're not gonna have a Patreon. We're gonna have like one of those sappy GoFundMes. We're 5 starving guys with a microphone under a bridge. Please send boxes of food.
That's what that wind noise is. It's not the fact that I've got a computer. It's just it's the generator.
We're homeless and we spent all our money on a microphone for some reason.
And magic cards. It's just like
You got the priorities straight, haven't you?
we'll blow for booster packs.
We'll blow for booster packs.
If people could see how skinny we are.
When it comes to making a good Magic player, I genuinely think that the one thing that does help is what you've said before, which is making the decks actually learning the interactions with the deck, as you said, Ben,
Yeah.
and also just really figuring out interactions with cards. Not even seeing spoilers, because sometimes you don't need to see spoilers. You can just make, if you're good enough, you can make what's good in front of you, because you know, you get to a point where you see patterns and what makes a good card a good card. Because one of the best things to make a good Magic player is what you can do to identify a good card, or if a card is good, but only if it interacts with something else.
Yeah. So one of the other things that does make a good Magic player is it's called the mind games, because there's a fair bit of psychology in how the game's played, and you know.
Yeah, there is an element of like, can you guess what I'm going to play next? Essentially.
I'd play games against Alex, and just from the way he plays out his turn, I can tell sometimes whether he's holding up counter magic or not.
Yeah.
This is also why I like to hold land in my hand if I've got nothing else to play.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, again, that comes
People
with
sit there.
the more
like,
you play, the things you learn is.
Yeah. I think a big element of it that to put like an overall blanket on a lot of the stuff we're talking about is just you've got to play a lot. and you got to play different decks, and you got to play different people playing different
You got to
decks.
put the time in. It's like learning an instrument. You can't just sit there and just get good. You have to actually really struggle and get angry and upset and go through the motions to actually get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
The pain is worth it, because at the end of the day you'll end up light years ahead of most other people that would have just net decked.
Yeah.
Because they learn absolutely nothing.
I think that's the
Absolutely
biggest
nothing.
difference. I think that's the biggest difference between people like us and people like them, because it's not an us versus them mentality. Although I just said us and them, it's it's down to
I
make it feel that way though.
they do. But the only reason they do is because I think some of them, even though they go to PTQs, even though they do all the things that they're meant to do, they don't do everything because of the fact that they only see it as a hobby. But it's a very expensive hobby.
It is a very expensive hobby.
If you net deck and you see the game as a hobby like that, it becomes obscenely expensive. It's like buying a new car level expensive, like a used car, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like a new car within about 4 years, but still, that's a lot of money to throw.
I think that's another reason why I think you've got to play a lot of different decks and try them out, is because eventually what you're going to narrow down to, I think with a lot of players, is you're going to find a deck that you enjoy playing with initially, and you're going to essentially just tweak it. Consistently tweak it, update it when new sets come out, and you're going to want to build that deck as your primary sort of thing, and you can't do that without all these other elements going into it.
I mean, anecdotal story, I've known players that play Control, and that's pretty much the only deck they play.
Yeah.
You know, whatever the format is, they'll find the Control deck in that format, and they'll play it.
Which is a lack of flexibility.
Which is a huge lack of flexibility, because when you put these people in a situation where they actually have to turn creatures sideways,
Yeah,
and go
but
into combat,
I do.
their combat math is they don't
They don't get it.
They don't know how to attack, they don't know how to block.
But I think
how
there
can they know
are.
how to play against these decks properly if they don't play them themselves?
That's one of the things I struggled with. Like even though I've played every kind of deck, I've played mid-range, tempo, control, and aggro. And the one thing that has always been consistent for me when I started with you, Paul, to be fair, when it was like pre-standard, like that we're in now, the one thing that was always consistent was I screwed up the math every time, because the things that you need to focus on when you're playing is how many cards are in someone's hand, how much your life total is, how much their life total is, what kind of board state they've got, how much damage is on board for them and you, and then think, is it profitable to swing, and will I get things through?
Yeah, it's like going back to what we were talking about when we were saying like what makes you enjoy the game in a sense, because that's what you got to do. You have got to enjoy the game.
That's
to
the
be
bit
good
that
at
I
it.
like.
I think that I think there are
the bit that I
people
like.
though who are definitely I've seen at F&M who are running those sort of control decks. So I do think the enjoyment actually comes from almost like a set of dominoes. They enjoy just the ability to go, right, I tap this, I do this, and you can see in their head they're following this specific guideline of what they want to do, and I don't think they'd like to play any other deck because of those variables that you need to know.
It's not only that,
and it is that like almost OCD-ness of I I'm obviously not naming names, but you can see them. I like, I tap this, I'm going to do this. That means I have to do that, and they're saying it to themselves mostly because the enjoyment comes from that guided setup to watch it all fall together.
It's deeper than that, though. It is deeper than that. Magic decks, when you actually build a deck that's yours, when it is yours and you own it, there is a reflection of yourself in that deck, which sounds really deep and pretentious, but I'll break it down. The reason why I say what I say is because everyone's personality affects the way they build a deck. So if you're quite closeted and you like to be in control, you build control-y type decks. If you're passionate and you like to feel like you can do not everything, but like within reason, but you build like I build. You build decks that try and do everything, but like try and cover every base. But there's always a slight reflection of who you are in every deck when you've built it.
I do agree with that completely, because I think there's things like getting unreasonably liking cards that you know really aren't great cards, but you just like the card. And you can't explain why. You just enjoy. Like for me, for some reason, Goblin Electromancer. No idea why. It's not really viable in most of the decks that you're going to use it in, but I just like the card.
It's a good card.
Yeah, there's no reason to it. I like the name. I like the design.
It has a home.
Yeah, it does have a home.
It's like Sam with Carney too.
Yeah,
Like,
Carly
he
too.
adores that goddamn
Still a
dinosaur.
dead
I can't disagree with him at
Yeah,
all.
no, it's a great card, but like
It's
it's
justifiable.
but like I said, you do just get attached to certain cards, and you do get attached to your deck, and you're like, because like you said, it's a reflection of what you put into it, isn't it?
Yeah, but well, we can't really. We're not talking about Crisis right now.
Glorybringer.
Glorybringer, my boy. But this is the same thing that we said.
It
Like,
ripped up Standard though.
This-
It was about.
yeah,
it is.
this is basically a continuation of what we said in the first podcast when we were talking about cards that we enjoyed back in our day. Like there were every single card that we put in our deck is like not only helping the message, but the things that we win with are usually the cards that we not only like but reflect who like parts of our personality. But when you get net deckers who play for hobby, the thing that reflects them the most is the archetype. So if someone's playing a mid-range deck, you know they're playing a mid-range deck because they like to be flexible. If someone's playing an aggro deck, you know it because they're very direct in what they want.
Do you think
Well,
part of
some
that
want
is
to win quickly. They don't want to waste time. They just want to win
Yeah,
the
they're
game.
very direct and to the
and get
point.
to the next game? Yeah, they don't enjoy actually playing the game. Like Magic.
They do,
Yeah.
but they enjoy playing it as quick as possible and throwing your opponent off balance.
Yeah,
It's
see,
focused and goal oriented.
Yeah. From my perspective, is that kind of feeling of how do you feel in your life? How do you feel about who you are? And that's what builds the deck with
lots
you.
of other elements will come into it as well. Like you said, I think partially how you play video games is a little bit into it. Like I said, I'm a very much one of those like. I don't play many strategy games. I'm not a big fan of the slow turn-based strategy
I hate
type
RTS
thing.
games.
You know, I like quick attacking and interactive
Hack and
games.
slash,
So so that's partially why I like my sort of quick aggro, quick play decks. And I think there are people who like will get that enjoyment of really long time strategy, playing the long game type thing.
Yeah.
They're gonna love control.
Well,
decks.
it mirrors in your deck, isn't it? Because one of your favourite cards, correct me if I'm wrong, was Tajik.
I still love Tajik. It's a boy.
It is a really good card.
Yeah, because and again, the
That'll be
reason is he's quick, he powers up more stuff, and he swings through for more damage.
That's what influences you as well because Tajik is a support card.
Yeah, no, I do
mostly.
agree. I agree completely with what you're saying.
Ooh,
And I
yeah.
think it isn't as pretentious as it sounds, is it? Because I think a lot
It
of
does.
what people do
It
for
does sound
hobbies
pretentious until
reflects
you
them.
break it down.
Yeah,
Until
Yeah.
you break it down. Yeah.
There's actually has brought to mind something else about what makes a good Magic player, which is like I say, when decks are extensions of your personality almost when you build them yourself.
Yeah.
And you always want to build a certain kind of deck.
Yeah.
And I find quite often the deck that I want to build doesn't exist in the standard
Well, you can't
Yeah,
make it
because
work.
it's not quite
Yeah.
viable. And realizing what's possible within the current set of
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I think you realize stuff with Magic that I think you will realize quickly, but they're good lessons to find out, which is like the stuff of. Don't just look at every card as an individual thing and think, oh well, that's a good card on its own, I should put that in, and just build up a whole deck of cards that are just individually on their own, and you haven't got those combos and those synergies between cards, and then you need to look at all that, because at the start for me, the reason I built a red-blue deck was just stuff like Drakes, all the fun stuff that looks good on their own, but then if you don't know the best like card draw or removal build to do, then it's a broken, useless deck basically.
I would be a bit controversial by saying that I think the two most boring styles of deck are aggro and control.
I can see why though. I can completely see why you say that.
I can't disagree, but that is because you are a mid-range player. You are also slightly mid-range control, Ella.
Yeah.
You like to mix things up. You prefer not one archetype. You like to mix two.
Yeah, and I feel
make
like there
something
is
out
an
of it.
element of aggro which is almost like if you're going to win in the first 5 turns, basically.
There can be more depth to aggro than people realise.
Yeah, there is.
Absolutely.
But a lot of people, when they just focus on aggro to begin with, it is very basic, and to some degrees, control can be very basic as well.
Aggro is basic because it's majoritively on numbers.
It's almost the opposite type to basic, isn't it? The control one is almost the basic of I'm just going to follow a guideline of how this deck should operate.
Well-
the aggro is just these will have big numbers on them, therefore I should put them all inside of my deck.
I would say even properly constructed control isn't massively interesting because the whole deck is reactive. So the cards you play are dictated by the cards that the majority of people are playing as their threats.
That's one of the things that I liked about my team, my red, green, blue, is because the majority of the deck is reactive. And when I say that, I mean I've got Merfolk Tricksters, which Michael say he loves because everybody loves Merfolk Trickster.
Yeah.
It is good.
Frilled Mystic because it's a counter spell on a body. But the difference is I like to contradict myself in regards to how it is. So it has control elements, but it's all on bodies, or there's something different about it that makes it themed.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to bring up with your team of deck, Alex. All your spells are on creature bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have nothing to counter, if you have nothing to play, and you're waiting for them to play something, and you have excess cards in your hand, you can still play the Frilled Mystic as be on the end of their turn, just for an attacker.
It's just options,
It's a majority of options. It's a multitude of options.
I think that's another thing that makes a good Magic player from you guys, is the ability to look at a deck, think, right, this is what I can play, I can do, but here are the 5 or 6 other options that I could run in this, and being able to actually think out exactly what you take out, what would go in, how that would change your game, and how it would change what you're playing against, and what you should play against. It is all, it's very tactical, but you learn from experience.
Sideboarding, that's
that's one that I'm still struggling with.
I was going to say, I don't.
Yeah.
That's one thing as a new player I really struggle with.
Sideboarding for me, the way I did sideboarding, because Paul's always complimenting my sideboarding. The way I've always tried to sideboard is looking at what my deck does, because this is another thing that helps make a good Magic player again, is looking at what my main deck does, looking at my opponent's deck and what I've seen that I struggled against, and then sideboarding accordingly depending on what I have, and trying not to, and only sideboarding enough to make sure the message of the deck isn't corrupted, or it slows the deck down and makes it anti-synergistic.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's difficult for new players. I don't think it's necessarily thinking about what you'd put in. I think it is, what do I take out that isn't going to break a bunch of synergies in my deck.
It's also difficult because if you haven't seen anything that your opponent has played that you struggle against, there's no point in sideboarding. Not at all.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing against a deck, the only reason to sideboard if you haven't seen anything that is a threat is because you know what you're playing against, and that's a meta deck, so you can sideboard freely. But if it's a deck that you don't know, the best thing you can do is not sideboard until you've seen something that makes you go, oh shit, I've got nothing to deal with this.
So generally, if you've already won the first game, generally there's no point in sideboarding unless you've seen something that you know that you won't be able to deal with. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, you know that there's something that they could play, but you've got away with it in that game.
I used to run an easy deck a long time ago that was basically aggro, and I had Disdainful Stroke in the sideboard because people were playing Ugin at the time.
Yeah.
And I knew that once somebody got that Ugin down, that was it. I was out of the game.
Yeah. I think that's where I think looking at the meta, I think for a good player is where it comes to difference. Instead of looking at guidelines, you are almost looking at it going, right, this is what I'm expecting the people at F&M to play. Yeah. So I can put stuff in my sideboard because I know that a lot of the people are just going to be running this meta. So
that's the way not to do it. And the reason I say that is because if you want to win F&M, you'll win F&M, but if you want to make a proper deck, you need to look at your deck. You need to make it more introvert. So you need to look at what your deck struggles against, and then you need to sideboard almost to the meta, nearly, but only to sideboard so it complements your main board. So what I mean is that my main board doesn't have X, which means X goes in the sideboard, and then once X is in the sideboard, you then have a plan of what you're going to take out to put into the main board in game 2. If you're going to play, say, aggro for instance, if you're playing, like, if you know the archetypes, you know that mid-range beats aggro, control gets beaten by aggro, and mid-range gets beaten by control.
Generally speaking.
Generally. That's how it usually goes.
Yeah.
So the best way to do it is to have a few cards that are specific for an archetype, and then a few cards specific to the meta, and then a few cards specific to what you're missing in the deck and what you wanted to fit in but couldn't. Now, that can be anything, but it depends on what you're running in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think you do need to be aware of the format, because the sideboard is a place where I think you can keep the main deck the same through most of standard, but it's the sideboard where it actually comes to having to actually evolve your sideboard around what's going around at the moment.
Yeah. I think watching people sideboard is probably a good indication of how good they are at Magic, because it is sort of they're a bit, if you could see what they're sideboarding in and how effective it works against you, then if they've done it right, then it shows that they not only understand their own deck, they understand your deck and how to stop your deck.
Yeah.
which is a sign of a pretty good player.
Which is why I love when people say I don't know how to sideboard against you, because it's like, no, you don't, because I'm not playing a meta deck.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's actually a skill that you kind of need to be a good Magic player, is the ability to look at a deck, go, okay, this deck's doing this, and go off plan. The ability to be able to go off plan with your sideboarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certain card choices prove to me that when people don't know how to sideboard against you, for instance, blanket sideboard cards that people put in just because they don't know any better. Like, I'm going to bring this up and it's going to piss a lot of people off. Duress. Duress is not a good card. It has never been a good card. It was at one point, to be fair, but Thoughtseize was better. We don't have Thoughtseize anymore.
Thoughtseize was insane.
Oh, yeah.
Thoughtseize was crackers.
Thoughtseize was absurd.
Yeah, but
So
Duress is too specific.
Yeah.
It's one mana for something that may possibly help you, but probably not. And
You need to build your deck right. to be able
yeah,
to
you're
use it.
wasting four sideboard slots. It's like when I see people running Unmoored Ego, which is the new what was it called? Lost Legacy.
Lost Legacy.
Yeah, which is the new Lost Legacy. You pay 3 mana, you name a card, you take a playset out. And yeah, it's fun and it's interesting, but it has no impact whatsoever on anyone in the game, on any deck. Especially someone Unmoored Ego'd me in game 2, and they took out my Field Mystics. And the screw up that they made was I mulled to 5 and I had 2 Field Mystics in hand because I had 3 land and I knew I was drawing a 4th. So I had that, I dropped my 2 Field Mystics and I drew 2 cards and it won me the game. Because Unmoored Ego is a waste of a turn 3. Just like Duress is a waste of a turn 1.
One of the key reasons is because they could top deck something that they could still play on that turn anyway.
Mhm.
I'm going to disagree on the hate for Duress though, because
But I think 2 off is good.
in certain situations it can be a bad card, but then again, against particular decks,
Control.
specifically Control, it can be really, really good.
It's because I ignore
I think
Control
4
because
is
I
excessive.
don't struggle against it, so I don't think Duress is a need. Even though ironically I'm running 2 Duress and 2 Divest in my sideboard for my Sultai variant. And the only reason I'm doing that is because Duress and Divest are really helpful on turn 1 and I have nothing to do on turn 1. If they're just using it as a filler for turn 1, sideboard in Opt, waste 4 card slots. Because 2 Duress I can agree with. I can definitely agree with 2 Duress. But 4 is a little bit too many because
I
you're going to
agree
top
with
deck in. You're going to top deck into it, and if you top deck into it, it's going to ruin your play. It's going to ruin the deck, and it's just going to stop you from doing anything constructive with your turns, unless you're running the Esper to ferry Kaya, in which case everything's an answer.
But then again, if you're playing against Control and you're in top deck mode, you've already lost. You just don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one thing that has always frustrated me as well. When I think that somebody is probably a bad player when they're playing against Control and they don't realise they've lost.
And they don't know when to concede.
You know, it's like
Well, to be fair, you could say that there's 2 reasons. Either they're a bad player and they don't know when to concede, or they're a good player and they just want to waste your time.
Yeah, I was going to say I've known a few who would just
Yeah.
go, yeah, I'm just going to play just to waste time because you
But
are.
if you're an aggro player, you
probably
should just quit that game
Which
to
they
get the
do.
next one in.
Yeah, well, I do.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I've scooped games at 27 and 29 life.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, right, at this point, you started removing lands.
Yeah.
I'm gone. Leave it. There's no
What,
point
because they
wasting my
emblem
time.
to ferry?
Yeah.
Yeah, now there's
Yeah.
no point once I do
Well,
that.
as soon as that's down,
Yeah.
pretty much, you're just like, no, I'll scoop.
Yeah.
Don't give them the satisfaction of being able to watch you suffer.
Mhm.
Well, it's not even that. It's I want more time for the game 3, which I need to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part
That's
of it
true.
as well. That there is actually a time to sit there and wait, and a time to not do that.
That's
It's
one
like
of
if you've won game 1, and the Control player is taking their time to take you out,
Mm.
you just sit there and chill,
Yeah.
wait for it to go
Yeah.
to time.
Yeah.
And I do
agree
want
with
to. I do actually want to move on because I want to move on to that, to what puts players off on that subject, because
Yeah, I like that idea.
Because what puts new players off mainly for me when I first started was Control. Control put me off.
I think it does.
because
I can
it's
see that.
for the other player it is fun for them, because like you said, they don't play that deck because they want to play that because they don't want to play it. They play it because it's fun to them. But to every other player you sit against, it is just boring. It is just so banal.
Yeah, it doesn't let you play the cards you want.
No, it doesn't.
So
And I think that's why I don't like Control, just because I think part of it is I'm winning by stopping you playing, and I just don't get the enjoyment out of the game from that, really.
But a new player would build a deck because they like the card. Brilliant, I want to play this 5/5 fighting thing or whatever.
Yeah, exciting card.
Yeah, exciting
Yeah.
card. And they go to, I've got this card, new card, brilliant. I'll play this card, gets countered.
Yeah.
I've lost all interest
Yeah.
because I haven't been able
That was
to
exactly why I stopped playing Magic in 2010. Was because people kept countering my big things that I really enjoyed playing. But thanks to Paul, if I hadn't met Paul, I don't think I'd be playing Magic. I don't think this podcast would exist because Paul taught me, don't get mad, get even.
Yeah.
And I would fuck over Control so much purely out of the fact that I enjoyed hurting people
Who played
that
Control.
played Control.
Right, yeah. That's
Because
Me too. Yeah.
yeah, it was down to the fact that I was punishing them to play for playing Control,
Yeah.
which sounds really horrible, but it's one of the reasons that I got into the game deeper. It's one of the reasons I stuck around because
you got
there
investment then.
there were ways to do it, and because there were ways to do it, it made me enjoy the game more. There's a particular player at F&M that always plays the same colours, and they are the only person that I don't get mad about when I lose. Like when I first started, like I got mad at them because it, like not mad at them, but like I got mad about it because it was like, oh, you're playing Control, boring. But now, because every time they play a deck, it's different. Not only is it out of the meta, they've built it themselves.
Yeah.
It becomes like, what you're going to do next? I'm really enjoying this game, even though it's Control. I'm still enjoying it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that can turn people off, just because if I didn't have a group of friends I was playing it with, it probably would turn me off, is the attitude of some players generally. I think there is a big element where, as a new player, you can accept losing a lot of games, but then when you win one, and the person opposite you turns around and goes, yeah, well, to be honest, you just got lucky, I couldn't play anything, and you were doing rubbish anyway, that type of thing, which makes you feel like, well, I'm not very good at this, I've just got jammy as hell on this go, there's no point me playing.
Yeah.
And it's really demoralising, whereas I think when you play against people and they turn around and just go, oh man, when you did that stopped, you won the game, like, it does just give you that boost of like, oh, well, I do understand a little bit of this game, maybe I can carry on and get better, whereas I think the saltiness that people take with losing, particularly to new players, is really it's not as effective as it's not as bad in Magic, I don't think, as a lot of other games, but it's still very poisonous.
It's it's toxic in regards to how people behave about it, and it's also toxic in regards to the excuses that people make when they sit there and they go, I just did this or I just did that. It's like, no, just call it variance, because as much as it is variance, that's all it is. Like if you just get land flooded or land screwed, it's like, yeah, it happens to all of us.
Yeah.
It just happens to happen at this time. And no one likes playing Magic on their own, not even Control players like playing Magic on their own.
Apart from when me and Paul play, and Paul gets screwed with his land.
Oh yeah, that was funny.
I was running a Mardu deck, right? I've got to say this, right? I was running a Mardu deck with 20 land. It had 13 white sources. I got 7 land down, and I still couldn't get a white source.
That's
in a
3 games in a row.
In a 21 land deck as well.
Yeah, I think a good response.
And a 20 land deck.
I think a good response if people are going to be like, not making an excuse, but if somebody's going to be like, it's because of this. I think the only good response is when they turn around and go, if you hadn't done that. Like, because I think that is something that makes you feel good when you're just, oh man, if you hadn't played that card then I'd have been able to do this, but you stopped.
That's
like
why
that.
it felt so
Stuff like that is just give people little boosts as they're playing against
Always
you. It makes such a difference. Always try and make it friendly and either compliment or say or give advice. I think those are the two things.
One thing I like to do for new players is if I've just beaten them flawlessly, I'll actually swap decks with them. I'll actually go have a go at it.
Really, really, really good. I think that's such an important thing. New players, if you can get the chance, play with somebody who's built a deck and built a good one, just because it does make a big difference seeing how a deck runs and having somebody who helps you run it. So
Sorry.
sorry,
That's
Alex is dying right now.
That,
so
that is
we'll,
so much better. Paul just turned the light off for me, and now I just feel so much better.
Oh, brilliant!
I can see.
And then
Yeah.
nobody can
He's
see
like
what he's
the
doing in the dark.
He's like an
got
opposite
such-
of a flower. He's unphotosynthesized.
I've got such a migraine.
Yeah.
Like I love that. Like I'm powering through it, but it's just like Jesus.
Yeah, you're giving it your all,
Christ.
man. But we can see like everyone's just casually chucked really worried glances at you as we've been
I
going
can't
on.
fucking see. I can't see it
Upset
because
me,
I've
I've
been
got
closing
my
my
soul.
eyes.
Do you want another
I've been closing my fucking eyes because I'm just like nah.
Oh man.
But it's all good. Like that's why I'm carrying on. Now I feel better because that
Yeah.
light was killing me.
Yeah.
I was like, should I turn the big light on? No, that'll fuck me up even more.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, if we can take it back to control decks as a negative aspect, I mean, I'm going to make myself very unpopular in this room.
Again.
No, not on the podcast, just in this room.
Oh, just this room.
Just in this room
go
and
on.
say, control decks are a bit like wasps, right? Everybody hates them, but they have a reason for existing.
No,
They
Yeah,
are
I think you
necessary.
meant
I
no.
completely agree with that. There needs to
Yeah,
be.
to make aggro
No.
a thing again
No.
over and over.
I think that
Oh,
there
nerdy
needs to be an
jokes.
element of control, because otherwise, how do you stop? I don't
Really absurd stuff.
really absurd combos. How do you stop?
Well, no, control needs to be a thing
It's
because
an important
there's
element
always
of it.
there's always going to be cards. There's always going to be decks where it's unstoppable or where it breaks the game, and when control can't stop it, it gets banned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty
What
much.
I would say
The
about
testing
control
ground.
as well is everybody that thinks that it's boring and everything should actually play it, because there is far more depth to it than people understand, because you do have to use your resources very cleverly. You have to make all the right decisions. It's not as easy on
Yeah.
the inside as it appears.
Definitely.
And it's
to
fine.
someone.
I think it's fine to
different
try it as well and say I don't enjoy playing this, but I think you do. I agree with you. You need to at least appreciate that it's not just a big game of note, but there's complexity and planning
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
people go into, and I think it does help you think. Okay, I can see how you enjoy this as well.
It's
when you
it's
play
the air of
When I
smug.
play, my heart's on my sleeve. You know what I mean? When
Yeah.
I'm playing control, it doesn't look like
It's
it, but
the air
I'm
of
thinking
smug.
shit. I've got to do
Yeah,
this
you're
right.
100%.
I've
See,
got to
you're
find
good.
that counter spell. I've got to find
So
that.
you're
maneuver.
fine about it, like with control. I get salty with you because you have an answer for everything. Like
Yeah.
there was a deck that you used to run that had planeswalkers. It was just an answer for everything all the time, and it was aggravating. But like, it's that general air of smugness
Yeah,
that I can't
100%
stand,
agree.
where people sit there and it's like. Because I know why it's there, because I felt it as well when I played Control, because I played 5-colour Control with 10 creatures, and you sit there and go, I'm winning, even though I haven't touched your life, I've made you lose all your resources, and I've got no board state, and I've kept you at bay for 9 turns, 10
Yeah,
turns.
I think that is why.
That's why it's so. That's why people love it so much,
Yeah.
because it gets to a point where you're just like, I'm winning with no board state. I'm not winning in the traditional way, even though ironically,
Yeah.
control has become a traditional thing.
Yeah, and like you, and I agree. And that's one of the reasons that puts people off. Like you said, is that element of like looking across the table at the person you're playing and thinking, you're not only are you winning by stopping me playing, you're
Yeah.
enjoying winning by stopping me playing,
Yeah.
and it really does. When you start thinking about that, it's like, oh, you're a bit of a dick. Like, and you can't help but just immediately think that in your head. I don't think.
Well, that's one of the things that, yes, like I say, one of the things that turns people off the game is coming to play the game and then not being able to play the game.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. To think I've got all these cards I can play, and every single time you think you're going to start something, just nope.
So
Nope,
this is also where aggro and control are actually similar in a way, because that's what happens to standard when aggro comes in as well.
Yeah.
People, if it's finely tuned and works perfectly, your opponent basically doesn't get to play either, because it's
Yeah.
like turn 4, you're dead.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly. Is this going to be the big reveal of this podcast? We found that essentially aggro and control are just the same thing.
They are
Two sides of
the same coin.
coin.
They
I think
really
they
are. No, I 100% agree with you. The more we delve into it, because it is that. It's basically the way you should be able to do it is I'm gonna be able to beat you before you get the chance to even start your combos and
But
strategies.
ironically, it's the thing that puts new players off, because it's a Sophie's choice. You cannot choose either one, because
Yeah.
you'll hate playing against control, but you're not advanced enough and you don't know enough about the rules and the mechanics to play control when you're new. So it means that people are doing something that's more advanced than what you can do, and because of that, you're kind of stuck in a rut of
Yeah.
playing, because the best way to start is to play aggro, because aggro gives you the baseline of mechanics, gives you the vague idea of how to do things, makes you understand what's going on and how the game works.
Yeah.
Mid-range steps you up and gives you some more flexible, complex ideas and synergies, and then control is just that one that goes, you want to learn mechanics? Learn the mechanics.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's every single mechanic that you're going to need to
You
know.
better understand every single thing that
Which
triggers
is-
and where it's going
yeah,
on the stack.
Which is why I liked what me and Paul did, which we started in, I think it was like late hour of dev, it was like October time, just after it came out, where we play a deck for 6 months solid. We play a certain archetype for 6 months. I've done it. I've played aggro for 6 months, I've played control for 6 months, and now I've played mid-range for nearly 6 months. And it's how I found what I like more than anything else. I like mid-range, I like tempo, and the reason I know that is because of how much time and effort I've put into thinking about the archetypes and playing the archetypes. And it makes you a better player. It moves back to making you a good Magic
I'll
player.
be honest with you.
Join
that
us
wasn't
next
my
year
own
when
thing.
Alex discovers combo.
I already had combo. I've already done combo.
They said to me that that's what they did. They tried ramp for 6 months, they tried control for 6 months, they tried aggro, they tried mid-range. But one thing that I would say is I think that you are probably a very good Magic player when you've successfully been able to build a mid-range deck that stands up to the meta. I think it's the hardest to build completely yourself.
Yeah.
Because
Because there are so many elements almost involved with it, yeah.
And that's one of the things
that's why I like it.
one of the things you have to acknowledge
Yeah.
is that no deck that you build is 100% yourself. It's 100% you.
Yeah.
Because no matter how hard you try, you're always going to bring in outside influences, whether it's cards you've seen perform well at F&M, lists you might have seen online,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing as well, I think.
without even thinking about it, you're unconsciously drawing in ideas.
Yeah, and once you start playing with it, you're going to end up playing against people who are going to be like, well, I'm playing this card, you end up having a discussion going, alright, so you're playing this, I need to think of a way that goes into this, and you're always getting those outside influences affecting how you build your deck, yeah.
Yeah, and almost without trying, you'll end up actually probably quite close to the meta.
Yeah. Well, it is the meta for a reason, isn't it?
I've had an experience where me and a friend before, we actually built the Bant Humans deck, and then the next week everybody was running Bant Humans because it had won at a GP.
Yeah.
Ours wasn't exactly the same, but it was just because we didn't have, I think it was Collected Company at the time, we didn't have that card, so we put something else in, which at the time was Heron's Grace Champion, which buffed all the humans.
And that's another thing that I think does help you improve, while we're talking about like what makes you improve as a player is not just going out looking at the meta and going, right, I'm going to buy every single card in this deck and put it together. It's almost the element of like, I can't afford to go out and buy this individual card, so I'm going to have to edit my deck to work without it.
Those restrictions are good because they teach you how to try and work around.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, some famous celebrity somewhere. Restriction breeds creativity. And it's like, I do think that is true in Magic as well, like putting, even if it's self-imposed restrictions, like I know you guys do a lot of stuff where you're like, I'm going to try and specifically build this type of deck. It helps really breed that sort of creativity of what you can put in there and what you can synergize together to get your desired effect.
Well, you have to, because I mean, if you just like standard sets down in front of you and go, I'm going to build a deck, you'll end up with analysis paralysis. You know, you have to narrow it down. You have to say, I'm going to build a deck that's doing this in these colours.
Yeah.
And then you can start to fine tune what you want.
Yeah, and like mine, building it around, like for new players, that I like this card, it's really cool, I want to build a deck around this card.
I think people should stop dismissing when new players like a card and actually try to help them make it work. You know, have a sense of community and help the people that are new, which is what I started trying to do myself.
Yeah, because like you guys,
with Alex as an example.
Yeah, and you guys have explained. I think the majority, the vast majority of cards that people can take a liking to, there is some way to build a deck that can evolve them in a viable way if you have the right people helping you and you're trying to just and you're having fun. It's not just I need to win and the decks that win don't have that card in, so I can't use it. Like you need to be able to go, right, I might not win every game, but I'm having fun playing.
And that's actually that's something that can turn new players off a game, as suddenly discovering the financial cost of the game.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is a big
like that nearly turned me off.
Yeah, it's not quite, I think, like Warhammer levels of initial startup cost.
Warhammer's obscene.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
But
get what you mean.
it's heading towards that territory.
No, it's nowhere near. It's nowhere near. Warhammer to start up is about 100 quid, if not more, whereas for Magic to start up is 90 dead on, and that's it. 90 for the latest set.
That's not
it.
That's not
And
an obscene amount of difference though. 190.
Well, no, 100. Well, no, 100 and like you're looking at about 130, 140 quid
Yeah.
for Warhammer. So you've got a £50 difference.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's like 90 quid for that. Whereas, unless you're me, in which case, when I started with Paul, I didn't buy a booster box or anything like that, which would be 90 quid or about $110. I ended up doing sealed games and draft games because it was like 25, 12 quid, but I was getting like packs. I was picking
and you get to play
rares,
games while you're doing it.
and I get to play games and learn how to build while I'm doing it.
I think
And that really helps.
Yeah, and I think the other thing for finance reasons is that it's not like a hobby like playing guitar where you can always just buy one guitar. That's your financial investment. It might be expensive, but it's a one-off investment. Magic, you are constantly investing in it.
I'm just looking back at like the 6 guitars I own and thinking,
Yeah, just one guitar. That's all you need.
just the one.
The thing you need might not be all you want, but still.
No, it's a need.
Go on, Paul.
It becomes a need.
That a lot of new players don't necessarily see is there are actually a lot of cheap cards out there that can actually shut down things like control. Like if you can just buy a playset and negate, if you fed up a control beat you as an example, and you will suddenly be able to have a lot more power over the situation.
Instantly.
It's like when I first started, it was a bit easier, admittedly, but I built decks out of the cards that I had that were like £20, and I was getting a success rate of 50-50 against the meta.
But that was because you had to be more creative.
But this is also where the internet helps, isn't it? Because instead of thinking like back in the day before the internet, you'd gone, right, I need these cards for my deck. I'm gonna have to buy a bunch of boosters. Just in hope that this card is in there. You can now go on these online marketplaces and buy the individual cards that you want at a cost that's relatively low. Like you said, if you need 4 negates, that's what is it, £1 a card?
10 pence a card.
10 pence a card. That's
£10.
It's
Well,
only
you
like
could
40p,
also-
and you've got something which can completely change.
Well, it's also
play.
buying singles out of the community as well. Like when you went to like a game store and you had friends there, or you knew people, you could always trade value for value. If you had like a really big card in the set that you knew you weren't going to get a playset off because you either couldn't afford it or didn't like it, and then you can just trade value for value for stuff that you're actually going to use. Which is one of the things that I really liked about the community that we have at FNM where we are, because you can just trade value for value and people don't really mind too much. That is one way of doing it, and that's probably the way they did it back in the Stone Age. But now, you do have the internet. You do have the internet.
Case in point, always be mindful of the values of the cards if you are going to trade.
Definitely, because you will get screwed.
Or at least check every single time.
Because there are sharks out there who will
there are some unscrupulous people.
who will basically try and rip you off to get the best deal possible by value.
I mean, everyone listening to this shit lives in the modern era with the internet. If you really don't know that there are people out there who are going to try and scam you no matter what you do, then I have a fantastic bank account number that you should be sending my way via email address. Exactly. $3 million straight to your account, I promise.
Right. So you've got a stupid game for us to do.
I have got a stupid game for us to do. Essentially, the game is I'm going to give you a choice of 4 cards. 3 of them are going to be real cards from Magic, and one of them is going to be fake. And it's your job to try and figure out which one's going to be fake. Unfortunately, Simon has an encyclopedic knowledge of cards, which scares me a little bit. So I think I know how this is going to go.
Thanks
but
for
let's try.
So you're building me up now, and this is where I'm going to fail.
Because then if he fails, it's going to be much more funny. But let's see. I don't know. If nothing else, I'm just going to get joy from telling people that these cards exist who may not know that some of these cards do actually exist in the Magic set. And they are going to be from the unstable and all those.
On that.
Yeah, all those types of sets and different ones.
Unstable.
Unhinged.
Unhinged.
Yeah.
Unglued, unhinged, unstable.
Right. So shall we have a go then, guys?
Yeah, this is more fun than I expected. So
Right. No, round 1. Let's have a try, shall we? Is it A, Ragamuffin, B, Gravel Guild Gunforce, C, the Island of Whack Whack, or D, the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale?
Do we get any description of the cards?
No,
or are we
that
just
you are
guessing
just
the
the
name?
name, and we're going to go.
So I recognise.
I'm pretty sure it's
Read
B.
them back to me again.
So A was.
A was Ragamuffin.
Real.
B was.
B. Oh, sorry, you want me to continue off what you were going to ask them. B was Gravel Guild Gun Force.
Unsure.
C was Island of Whack Whack.
Also unsure.
And D was the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale.
That's real.
Okay, so you're torn between B and C then.
I thought it was.
Go
I
with
thought
B
B
as
was
the type.
real.
I was going to go C.
I didn't.
Alright, well just stick with your instinct, because if we have different options that'll be more fun than everyone just guessing the same one.
I'm pretty sure B was
'Cause
real.
Then someone will be wrong.
Well, A and D, I know they're real for a fact. I know that.
Oh, okay. That's cool. We should really be keeping.
This is what I mean, I feel like we should ask everyone else and then Simon.
Yeah, we should really,
This is the test one.
Would that be an unfair thing to do? Will I be sectioning him out?
Do you want me to keep
It's a-
quiet and let everyone mess
Let's
up?
should we see and then should we go with this?
Okay, well, let's just
well, let's see what you guess actually before we
Yeah.
say that. Really.
So it's between was it Gravel Guild,
Gravel Guild Gun Force and Island of Whack Whack.
Gravel Guild Gun
Gravel
Force?
I'm pretty sure
I'll-
that sounds like an uncard.
All right. So
Gravel Guild, I'm going to say no to.
so what are we guessing? Should we
It's a
take
fake,
some
I'm saying
answers?
I'm calling. I'm calling B as fake.
B. Well, you're going with B as well then, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm going for C.
You're going for C.
I thought B was real, so I've screwed myself up.
Alright, go for whichever one you think.
Yeah.
Don't just rely on Simon's knowledge. He
No,
might be wrong.
I literally
He's
thought.
still guessing
'cause-
between two cards.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
guessing at
still
this
going.
point.
No,
And now he's
I,
like,
I go.
I'm worried he's got the internet up and he's just going to delay and Google until he can
No,
find
I'm
out.
keeping score.
Ah, interesting. Oh, you keep score. Interesting. I like it.
No, I'm keeping score.
Yeah.
No, I genuinely thought B was real, and the other three were fake. So, let's see what happens.
What are you going to go with then for the fake one?
Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with that.
You're going to go with B.
Yeah, B.
The answer was B. Gravel Guild Gun Force.
Yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, that was the one that I think was the toughest round. Let's go for, shall we?
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm
So
gonna
what did I get a point for?
Yeah, everyone except Mikey D got a point because he followed his heart.
I'm going to stay quiet until everyone's done.
That's maybe not a bad suggestion, although Paul was probably the quickest on that one actually to just point out. Alright, so question 2. Is it A, Goblin Ski Patrol, B, Rocket Powered Turbo Slug, C, Electric Cattle Prod, or D, Bearscape?
Bearscape, I'm going with D.
Alright, straight away, Paul's on it, he's not even questioning it. Alright, D for Paul then.
Read them out again, then, please.
Read them out again. A, Goblin Ski Patrol, B, Rocket Powered Turbo Slug, C, Electric Cattle Prod, or D, Bearscape?
I have no idea.
I'm pretty sure it's D.
I guess we're for B.
You're going to go for B. Okay, so we've got 2 for D and 1 for B. Okay, Simon, you may now unmute yourself and join in the conversation again.
Okay, so B and C are definitely real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think.
I knew electric.
Actually, B is real. C, I'm not sure, but I think it's real.
You are correct. It is real.
I got a funny feeling that the wrong one is actually A. No, sorry, I've got a funny feeling the wrong one is actually D. I think A is a real card.
The correct answer was Electric Cattle Prod.
Oh,
I thought I'd heard of that one.
That sounded a bit more
No.
reasonable than
No,
the
that was the fake man. Bearscape is real.
Ah.
I know, I was as
Sounded-
shocked as anybody.
Sounded pretty reasonable for a
Okay,
card.
so
Yeah.
no, I'm quite happy
that
with
was really deceptive. Well done.
Thank you.
Nice.
I feel intelligent. Now let's ruin this.
Just gonna cut this,
no, I'm going to enjoy. Yeah, don't put any of that in. We'll cut that question entirely.
Yeah, just gonna cut that.
no,
because
okay,
it makes
so-
us all look stupid.
Yeah, this one is more. I'm just going to enjoy reading the card names, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So, question 3: is it going to be A, Throne of Bone? B, our market research shows that players like really long card names, so we made this card to have the absolutely longest card name ever, Elemental. C, Arkhan's Run, or D, the Mighty Snail Force.
Can you read those again, please?
Don't make me read B again.
Can you read it specifically?
B?
No, don't read B again. Don't read B again because I know that's real.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
I
gonna
was gonna
have-
say, that is one I will say. I think
Arkhan's
B's
Run, wasn't it? B.
Yeah, but no,
Yeah.
Arkhan's Run was C.
Arkhan's
Oh,
Run
that's
is real.
Yeah, B was the absurdly long card name.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
and
real.
what's A and C again?
A is Throne of Bone and D is Mighty Snail Force.
D. I'm pretty sure D's fake.
I was going to go for Snarfalls, yeah.
Yep, D.
I'm gonna try A. I think it might be D, but I'm gonna go A.
Okay.
It's absolutely D.
Yeah, it's absolutely D.
No.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the weaker ones, but I just wanted to really save a really long card name and get it right. So
What was it again?
our market research shows that players like really long card names, so we made this card to have the absolutely longest card name ever, Elemental. Question.
I'm literally just going to re-edit you saying the card name in when he said
Yeah, I was.
nice.
Right. This has been the most cut part of the show, just Alex rearranging everything. Alright, question 4. Is it A, Land of Undying Death, B, Adorable Kitten, C, Asquatch, or D, Blast from the Past?
Asquatch is real. And I know it is because I had City of Ass as well.
Can you
But-
read them again?
Yeah, I can. It's A, Land of Undying Death, B, Adorable Kitten, C, Asquatch, or D, Blast from the Past.
Oh, is it?
I think it's A.
I was gonna say A, Undying Death.
I
I think the Adorable Kitten.
Hang on. No.
Is the Adorable Kitten the one where you give?
No, that's Harmless Offering.
Oh, you're right.
That's
Damn
one.
card art.
I believe that Adorable Kitten might have been from the latest onset.
I'm gonna have to go with. I'm gonna have to go with B. I don't know why, but I just feel like I'm probably wrong. But I'm gonna go with B.
You're going to go B, alright,
Yeah.
Mikey?
A, we'll go A.
We're going to go A.
Stick with it.
Paul?
A.
We're going to go A. Simon?
Right, so take you through my thought process on this.
Go on.
Come on, God, share your
A
wisdom.
is not a card that I know. B, I don't think I recognise the card name. It really, really does feel like an uncard. You got us with that before though, so that's quite good. B was the Adorable Kitten,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah. Asquatch is definitely real, and the last one you said,
Blast from the Past.
that's definitely real as
I've
well.
heard of that one, definitely.
That's a crazy dinosaur card with a million different nonsensical abilities. It's great. I think the Adorable Kitten's real, so I think that the Land of Undying Death, the A is fake.
And you would be correct. Answer is A, Land of Undying Death.
Told you. Was Adorable Kitten in the latest onset?
I wouldn't be able to
Oh,
tell you, but I have a feeling it
unstable?
was. It is. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
I have a feeling quite a few of these actually are more recent, like the
Yeah.
latter questions, because I think they were coming
Okay.
up more on the
Yeah.
page I was looking at. Right, so question 5, last one as well. Is it A, Box of Free-Range Goblins, B, Mighty Squawker, C, Carnivorous Death Parrot, or D, Cheaty Face?
Oh, we know. I know Cheaty Face is real.
Yeah,
Alright,
so
That's a
Yeah.
hilarious effect.
I actually have a
I'm sure
story
I
about
do,
Cheaty
right.
Face that I'll do after this.
Yeah, that's
Brilliant.
What are B and C again, please?
B were Mighty Squawker and C was Carnivorous Death Parrot.
I think Carnivorous Death Parrot may sound a
I
bit.
think it's B.
Fake.
I think it's B as well.
I think it's B. Because Carnivorous Death Parrot, I'm pretty sure, was in another onset. It's pretty much an unstable theme questionnaire. I love it. Yeah, I'll
So
stick.
You'll
I'll
stick with B?
lock in with B. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, B also.
B for me.
A was Box of Free-Range Goblins, B was Mighty Squawker, C was Carnivorous Death Parrot, and D was Cheaty Face.
Yeah, so we know the last two. They're definitely cards. I think Mighty Squawker is the fake.
And you would be correct, Mighty Squawker
Oh, I
is
knew
the
that.
fake.
I was
So it got easier as it went on, but still, you know, not everyone got perfect scores. I'd consider that a blanket success.
Oh, good that was. Yeah.
No,
Well, that's an interesting scoreboard. So at the top we have Simon with 4, and everybody else is joint second with 3.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Everybody else is joint second. Right, thank you everyone for joining us for the second episode. Please like, comment and subscribe, and we shall see you next month. So bye guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.